I would like to announce the new community for the podcast and how can you support this podcast with Patreon. Now we have a community at Patreon, patreon.com/ArtisticallyYouPodcast. We have tiers to provide you with many different ways to help the podcast and receive some perks and benefits. Also, you can start just with a tier that costs literally the price of a coffee. It would help a lot of the cost of the podcast, but also to have exclusive content, get-togethers, and all kinds of perks in the future. We have already set up many tiers that you absolutely will enjoy. I would like you to check, and I can't wait to see you there. Again, patreon.com/ArtisticallyYouPodcast. I'll see you there. Hey you, I'm so glad you're here. I have a great podcast for you today. I would appreciate if you would stop by Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Also, if you don't listen on Apple Podcasts, what you can do if you have Instagram, tag me, take a picture that you're listening to the podcast. We would love to hear the guests too. I have a great guest today, Juliet Thomas. She's from London. She's a passionate, creative practitioner. She understands that creativity delivers powerful benefits to our well-being, and she loves to help people find their own creative magic to live a more enriched and fulfilled life. We had a great conversation about needle felting, about watercolor and cards, and about creativity because she writes a lot about creativity and she has a great blog. I hope you enjoy. I'll catch you on the next one. Juliet, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here. I think we're going to have a great talk today because you do some interesting things. So
thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and first tell people where you're from, where you're talking from with me.
Yeah, so I'm from West Yorkshire, a really tiny village in West Yorkshire in England. All the beautiful autumn trees are out at the moment. So yeah, it's really nice at the moment.
So just for us to have an idea where it is, how long it is from London where you are?
Oh gosh, it's 2 hours on the train. So yeah, we're quite up north from London, but not far. I'm sort of in between Manchester and Leeds, to be honest. So yeah.
Julia does some very interesting things. But first of all, we're going to talk about her art, but she also talks a lot about creativity, and she has a whole program for creativity, and I love it. And when I found her blog, I think she was on Instagram Live that we were watching, and she had a comment, and I saw her handle, and I was like, Curious Creative? Okay, wait, I love this kind of talks. I mean, I'm very nerdy about creativity. So I went to her account, which lets me, and I'll put here her IG, which is at the Curious Creative Club.
It's a bit of a tongue twister.
Yes, and oh my gosh, when I went to your website, I started reading blog post after blog post after blog post. You also do needle felt art, and you also do cards. So
yes, that's right.
Needle felt is so intriguing to me because I have no idea how you get that together.
But it's actually way more simple than you think, believe it or not.
Really? It seems so like complex. But first, let us know, how do you get to be in contact with needle felt, and how you get to learn that, why you got interested in needle felt? Because you don't see a lot of people that do that. No, unfortunately, because it's beautiful. And I have here her. It's amazing. It's so beautiful. How is the size of the art you do? What size is that?
It's about 23 centimeters by 23 because that fits in the box frames really well. So it's not huge. I'll show you an example. I brought one up here. So it's just like a little box frame, really.
Okay, so it looks to me like it's 6 by 6 inches, but I will do the conversion once I do the blog post and the notes.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's probably about right.
So tell us, how did you get it started and everything?
Yeah, so I'll start from the very beginning. So when I was little, I loved doing art. My dad used to buy me like sketch pads and pens and all that kind of thing quite regularly, so I was always really into that. And he was a really good artist. He was really good
Oh.
drawer. He did a lot of birds. He was a big bird watcher, so his art was mainly around that. But then, like everybody, I kind of went into a corporate career. I didn't do anything particular with it. I did art GCSE and I passed that, and I did a design GCSE as well and I passed that. But it was never kind of meant, going to be a career or anything like that. I worked in marketing, so that included working with the design teams quite a lot. So it kind of had that creative element. But then I left corporate land 5 years ago now, and since then, a friend of a friend said, "Why don't you come along to this local art group?" So it was called Shelley Art Group. It's a village not far from me, and that's where I've learned everything. And it was so funny because I went in and I was absolutely rubbish. I drew a picture of my dog. It was laughable. It looked like some, 3-year-old had done it. And I was amongst all these really, really talented artists. So I was just like, are they even going to let me back? So I kept going back. Thankfully, they didn't kick me out. And I kept going back. And they do a lot of demonstrations. So, I mean, this art group is amazing. It costs hardly anything. And we get really good demonstrators coming along to show us different techniques. So that's kind of where my journey began, really, because I kept going to that, and they did their own exhibition in March. So I think I joined in like October, and they had a yearly exhibition in March. So I very tentatively put a few pieces up, and I think I sold one or two, not many, but I sold one or two. And then as time sort of went on, the group joined a really kind of locally famous event called Home Firth Art Week here. So it's a really big deal kind of around this area, and the whole of the town is taken over by this art week, and people show all their pieces and sell them. And we took over like the Fringe Festival part of it, our art group. So because of that, we all had like tables and stalls and things. So that's when I created my first card collection, which I really enjoyed doing. There's something really weird about, and I don't know if you'll relate to this, but doing a larger piece and then seeing it shrunk down into a card somehow makes it look really good, and I don't know how. I don't know if it's just like the smaller
And I
detail.
have,
I don't know.
yeah, I have here on the screen an example of one of your cards. So the
Yeah.
cards are in watercolor, or what medium do you use?
Right, well, this is where my journey is probably slightly different. I was listening to the last episode of yours today, and many artists obviously specialize, but I'm still not at that point. So I've been doing this 4 years, and I do all kinds of things. So the one you just showed then is a technique called line and wash. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's watercolor, but it's also with pen. So
Yeah, they use ink pen, right?
yeah, ink pen, and then but you do like a wash of color rather
Yeah,
than like a really detailed
yeah.
watercolor. And I learned this style again from a demo at the group from a guy called John Harrison.
But to do
Who's
ink and
who's
wash, you have to be good at
yeah.
drawing, because this is amazing, the drawing here that you have.
Thank you. Well, I just like it because you kind of giving an impression of the view. You're not doing it exactly. So for
Right.
me, it's a lot freer. And John Harrison is brilliant at it. If you ever want to watch any demos online and wash, he has a lot on YouTube and he's really good. So I always like to try these new things. So these techniques that we learn at the group, I will then do at home and have a go at. And, I haven't found a particular niche yet because I still like trying all this stuff.
So wasn't this group that you discovered felt, the needle felt?
No, so this was slightly different, although she was a member at one point. So I went along to just a local workshop by a lady called Sam Jackman, who is really good at needle felt, and is probably the only one I know in the area that does these kind of landscape ones. And she taught us how to do it, and it is really simple. I know they look complicated, but they're not. So you use merino wool, and it's you get a square piece of felt and all your different coloured merino wools, and you lay them out on top of the felt. So you're doing your background first. So you maybe start with the sky and then downwards and with the hills and things like that. And then you have a special needle that's quite long and it's barbed.
Mm.
So and all you do is literally stab the wool into place. And because it's got this barb, it kind of tucks it under the felt and holds it there. But what's really good about that is if you make a mistake, you just pull the wool away from the felt and
Right.
start again. So it's really good. You can't
And
really fail with needle
yes, and I'm
felt.
here showing for people that are just listening, kind of a
Yeah,
landscape. So you
yeah.
have a tree. So you were saying that, for example, in this one has a tree, it has some little
Yeah.
birds. You
Yeah. So
put
what I
you
do
lay out that
is
first, right?
I lay out the background first. So I'll choose the colours that I really like, and that's the part I really like, kind of selecting the colours and how they work together. So I'll lay out that background, and you get all that kind of stabbed into place. And then you add details on top of that. So that might be where I then add the sheep, I add the tree, I add the
Oh, it's a
walls,
sheep.
the
Okay.
birds, things like that. Yeah. So um, the sheep are really fiddly, to be honest. They're the hardest bit to master because they're just so small.
They're
So
so small, yeah.
yeah,
That's amazing. I
it's
love the
getting really
texture.
yeah, the texture's amazing, and I'm the first one to have Sam, who taught me this, didn't have a go at this, but I've got a really good printer that I use for my cards. And I just thought, I wonder what the needle felts would look like scanned in as a card. Um, because they are flat,
Right.
they're textured, but they're flat. They're not like really thick. So I then started making cards of these. I don't know if you can see that well.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
wow.
but it shows the
It looks
texture really
amazing.
well. Yeah, they
It
look
looks really
3D.
good.
Oh, so
Amazing, right?
I sell them as well.
That's
Yeah,
a great idea as well.
yeah. It's another way of using your art, isn't it? So when I've done them all, I'll take them down to be scanned in, so that I've then got them there ready for cards if I need them. So that's the needle felt side of things, and I sell those locally. So we've got a shop just down the road from us called Utterly Yorkshire that's all very Yorkshire based, and obviously these kind of landscapes really suit where we live because we're really out in the countryside, and there's a lot of kind of Yorkshire artists, if you know what I mean. So they sell really well locally because they are a bit different, and they you know it's an old technique, I suppose, but they can look quite contemporary, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
that's
then
where the needle felt comes from.
you sell your cards as well in the shops.
Yeah, so there's several. Again, I'm really lucky where I live. We've got lots of kind of crafty and arty shops around here, especially like in Home Firth. So I'll sell my cards there, and I also do like picture prints. So just to give you an idea of, I don't just stick to one thing. The latest demo that we've had is with a lady called Miriam Lavelle, or it might be Laville. And she's an acrylic abstract artist, and she came along and did a demo and went round to show us different techniques and
I
things.
saw that
So
on your
I
Instagram. You did some great landscapes. Yeah.
yeah, why, it's always back to front this way, isn't
It's
it?
the other way. Yeah. It's the other way.
Is it the other way?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. There it is.
So yeah,
Oh, wow. This is
that's an
great.
example of what we did on that night, and then I've done a bit of a series of them, so had them
That's
made into
great.
cards and prints. So I'll be selling these at the markets that are coming up. And then my first ever acrylic I did from a photo, and I really love this. This is in my kitchen, so I've had a print of this made, but that is like a
Other
Yorkshire
side.
wall.
The
That
opposite.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, a Yorkshire wall, so it kind of looks like you're
Oh.
walking down, and then these are the fields at the other side, and the sky at the back.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I love the kind of playing with the texture side of acrylics. I think
Yeah.
acrylics are really good for that.
Yeah,
Um,
they are.
yeah, and then I've done simple things like pens. So my daughter's a massive swimmer, and I've spent a lot of the time at the side of pools and things, and just doing simple things like that, like the birds,
So she's
on
showing some
colours.
birds. Is that acrylics or
No, that's
watercolor?
just felt tip pen,
Oh,
colouring
wow.
away, but very fiddly. So I did all the birds individually and then had them made up in several different cards and then some group ones like these.
Uh-huh. So cute.
Yeah, so again, it's just, very simple idea, but look quite nice. And the bird ones always sell really well.
Yeah.
Um, Another demo that we had was on pointillism. I don't know if you've heard of that,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
where it's kind of the spotty
Yeah.
style. So I had a go at that. That is
Is that
takes the longest
relaxing?
time.
Is that relaxing?
Kind of, but kind of frustrating because it takes so
Yeah, that's
long.
what I
So
thought.
it
I
is
would be nuts.
relaxing, but
I
it
would be
takes forever.
nuts.
So it wasn't for everyone, definitely not.
So
And then finally,
talking about
go on.
relaxation also, I think needle felting feels relaxing.
Really relaxing because if you've had a stressful day, there's nothing like just stabbing something.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is. It's very good for that. I have to say, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the other thing you're gonna show?
I was just going to show. So these are some things that I did last. This I did some last summer, and then I've done them in a different colorway this summer. So these are. We have a lot of like flowering grasses up the lane where I walk. So these are the grasses that I've picked, and I've printed them, but then I've fastened the actual ones in. So the white one in the middle there is the actual grass, and I've fastened it to the back of the card and then scanned those in. And like the yellow one at the end, there at the end, that's a real one, and the blue one at the other end. So it's a mixture of print and the actual grasses in the cards, if you see what I mean.
Wow. This is
Yeah.
beautiful.
So I've had them made up into like
This
prints as
is I
well.
would
Yeah,
not
they're
give
just
that to
like
someone. I would frame this.
no, well, I framed them and put them in the shops, but what I like, I
This is
guess, is
beautiful.
because I'm such a nature geek, I think I just like making something out of potentially what people see as nothing. So these are all
Yeah.
just, different flowering grasses where I walk that I collect and then
I
make
like
something
that.
out of.
Very different, especially with the dark
Yeah.
background.
Yeah, I really liked doing the dark background. This color showed really well.
And also there's a difference of textures, right?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's okay when we are experimenting
Hmm.
and till you decide of something. Or maybe, some people they like everything. I like a lot of things as
I
well.
don't think I will. I don't think I will ever specialize because I just like having a go at something. It doesn't always work, but I think I'm just that endless, curious type personality that would get bored if I stuck to just one thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
But they all kind of generally connect together in either something to do with nature and trees or plants, or I quite like doing the building side of things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, in your Instagram, we can see that you like a lot of nature. You're always out and
Yeah.
about. And again, for people that are not seeing on YouTube, her Instagram is the Curious Creative Club.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so, when did you start to be interested in talk about and write about creativity?
Right. Well, like I say, I left corporate life because it was just too difficult juggling the kids where they needed to be everywhere. Because like I say, my daughter swims a lot, and my son was doing lots of acting at that time. So it just got feasible. So I left corporate land, and then we got a dog um, who took up half my time. I was like a third child. But what was great about her was she got me back out into nature. So I grew up very much, I was an only child. I lived in the woods. I came home at tea time, and that was about it. I was a total tomboy. I spent all my life in the woods, which is why I think I've got a big fascination with trees. So the whole creativity journey kind of stemmed from that because I started recording my walks on my other Instagram account, which is called Soothed by Nature. That is to give people a daily dose of nature if they can't get out. So if they're in an office and they just kind of want that nature view hit, that was why I set that up. So that was kind of the first dabble of creativity for that year. And then I had just a year of experimentation. I was meant to write a novel, and I did start that. It's always been a long held dream. But I went to other writing classes, I joined the art group. I experimented as much as possible in that first year. And then my son got an acting job at Leeds Theatre. He was in an Opera North production for
Wow.
3 months. Had a lot of rehearsals, and I'd always thought about writing a blog. But because I was spending so much time in this place but I had to wait for him, I found a bar very close to Leeds Theatre, a really nice little bar. And I just started thinking about, what I could write about in the blog, and that's kind of where it was born from, really. And then I launched it that following January, um, and I've written it ever since. I started off weekly for a year, and then that slowed down because I got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma in November 2019.
Wow.
So then it became like every 2 weeks when I was feeling well enough to do it. So that's kind of where the blog stemmed from. And then everything else has just come out of that. So, like I mentioned before, I've always got a billion ideas. I always want to run with them. There's only so much time in the day. But, I
So
love writing.
are you okay now with your cancer?
Yeah, so I got the in remission news this last February. So, yeah,
Great,
all fine.
great.
Yeah.
But when you were writing and having these ideas for the blog posts, you were already thinking about helping artists or just people that, okay, that feel that, okay, I'm not creative and I want to start something, or all kinds of creatives? What was your intention back then or now?
It was a bit of a mixture. So I wanted people to take on on the journey with me. So I wanted to learn about it for myself as well, and I kind of a lot of the first blogs were about that, sort of looking into it for myself and hoping that others would benefit from it too. I interviewed some local creatives as well to get kind of their input, but genuinely it was more about getting people to understand that everybody is creative and that it is for everybody. It's not a thing where if you can't do art, I'm not creative. I wanted to explore all the different areas, and it's all just about finding what you can get into, and there's so many options out there. So, and it's just so good for your well-being. I know for
Yes.
myself, if I don't get to be creative in a week, I can so tell the difference in myself. And especially with lockdown, that took it to a whole new level because everybody was bored and not knowing what to do with themselves. So then that kind of, stepped up a gear as to, right, come on, use this for your creativity. I did actually start writing a book in lockdown as well, which I'm going to call Creative by Nature. And that's kind of a non-fiction book about my journey with creativity from being a child, which I didn't realise was so creative at the time because it was just normal for me. So it's kind of part biography, part what obstacles we come up against, and then part practicalities of how to do it. So that is still ongoing, and hopefully one day I'll do something with it and get it published. But yeah, it was mainly to help people understand that all humans are creative and challenge that ideal that they're not, and to take away that, throwaway comment that some art teacher or English teacher might have made when you were 10 and you've believed all your life. It's a lot of us have that in our heads, don't we, when we think about trying these things. But it's just to experiment and play as well. And I always preach to everybody that I talk to that it's practice makes progress, not perfection. It's not about perfection. It's about just improving steadily, however you want to improve. So yeah,
It's really like a work for the soul, right? I think
yeah,
creativity is really a work for the soul.
yeah,
What you said
yeah.
when
And I
you.
liken it to active meditation as well. So I'm not very good at the standard meditation,
Me too.
and I know a lot of people struggle with that. But give me something creative to do, and I can lose a whole day
Yes.
quite easily.
Yes. I I talked about that before as well, that I believe that creativity is a form of meditation because when you actually practice something that you are present, is a
Yeah,
meditation. When you are not caught in your thoughts and you are
yeah,
just immersed on that task
yeah.
and in the colors and whatever you're doing, the textures, it is a meditation. It's like when people do
Absolutely.
walking meditations, the walking meditations,
Yeah.
you look at nature and you focus on the nature so you're not, you are
Yeah.
present in nature. So that is a meditation as well because meditation is just you being
Absolutely.
present, right?
Yeah, I agree. And the photography side of that really makes you, some people might say you shouldn't be taking pictures, you should be taking it all in. But actually, photography makes me look at it closer. So it makes me notice it even more because I'm looking for that image, or I'm looking for something different to take each day. So it
Yeah.
really does heighten your awareness, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was. And when I was going through treatment, obviously treatment was pretty rough. I had chemo for 6 months and then some
Yeah.
radiotherapy for a month as well. And there was lots of side effects to do with that, and to just often get me through feeling so rubbish, if I could just focus on something else, it really helped. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And so I'm curious about your process. Like, do you base your articles and your writing? Do you do research? Is because you talk to people? Because your articles are so good.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. Um, I think I'm just very aware of kind of what's going on at the time. I spend a lot of time on Instagram, so I know what people's concerns are.
Yeah.
I'm really into kind of the psychology and well-being world. So I regularly hear what is coming up for people. I'm a massive podcast junkie, which you probably know that. So I hear a lot of this about, but quite often it might be something that's triggered by something that I'm finding difficult, or somebody else around me is finding difficult to do with creativity. Or, for example, we did a whole well-being day that I did with a friend on Monday, which you'll have seen on my Instagram. And I delivered a creative workshop as part of that to do with writing. And so much came out of that day that I know my next blog post will probably be writing about that day. So I'm actively involved, I suppose, in the creative world. So I get my ideas and inspiration from that, really. And every week I do a creative writing club as well. And
Yes.
I'm always looking for ideas, and not once have I not had one yet. I've not had a blank yet. And
Yes, and
it's a
we.
bit of a twist because
Yes,
I
and we.
wake up in the middle of the night all the time with
Oh,
ideas.
really?
So it's it's a blessing and a curse. I dream them, honestly. It's a
Oh
nightmare.
my gosh,
Well, it's
that's
good, but it's a
amazing.
nightmare because I'll be awake for ages just thinking, right, okay, this is what I could do today.
Something that is interesting to me, we're going to talk about your clubs, but I don't know if you know, but there's an American artist called Ryan Rutenberg. He's an oil
Okay.
painter and he does abstract landscapes in oils. And he
Yeah.
does this monthly YouTube vlog. It's just one video once a month. But of course, he shows his process, but I think his blog is so much, his vlog is so much about creativity. I'm obsessed with his vlogs. I wait all month. And something that resonated in the last one that he said, I even put as a quote to post on my Instagram later, is creativity is not what you do. I think is what you are, right? Because sometimes I think what he meant is, I may be wrong, but it's something like this. I think what he meant is, you know, don't judge your creativity just because you're doing something. Creativity is within you. It's not if
Yeah.
you're doing anything. Because sometimes
No.
people think, I have to do something to be creative. And I think what he's saying is, no, you already are. It's not something that you do, it's something that you are, right?
Yeah. I know what you
So
mean.
is when he said that, I was like, huh. Like, so he has these nuggets of wisdom about art and creativity. I think more than even his work, because he has so much wisdom about that, about creativity and
Yeah.
art and being an artist. And he also mixed with stories, the stories of his past, the stories where he was born, which I think is so amazing,
Yeah.
right? Because I think what we are and our story is related to our creativity.
Absolutely. And I
As you
think,
said, right? As a child, I was interested in that. And it comes from
yeah.
all those parts of who you are. It makes part of that, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it's to do with stories, the stories that you have in your life that happen to you, but also the ones you
Yes,
create. So, um,
absolutely.
I'm a big believer in, I talk a lot about this on my blog about, if you hit that kind of creative rut,
Oh,
then you
yeah.
need to go out and stop and go and have some experiences because you need to feed it. You can't just stay in a box and not do anything because
Yeah.
then where are you going to find the inspiration? You need to go out, experience new things, feed it. We've got a really good, the picture of this that you showed, the line and wash one
Mm-hmm.
there. Um,
Let
that
me
is
put here.
it's from a place called, Staithes Village
Mm-hmm.
and that's a Yorkshire seaside town. And in September, normally they have what's called Staithes Art Festival. And there's
Mm-hmm.
loads of these little cottages, and basically they rent out their cottage bottom floors to artists.
Oh, wow.
So there are over 100 artists at this tiny little village, all with like their number on the outside of their cottage. And you go around and you see all these different artists and they sell their stuff. And that blew my mind. From then on, I've been like, I
What
want a
time of the
cottage
year is
instead.
this?
It's in September normally. They didn't have it this year because of lockdown, which is
COVID, yeah.
was really annoying. Um, but yeah, it just takes over the whole place for the weekend, and it's just amazing. It's
Wow.
just brilliant.
Such a
So
unique
it's things like
idea.
that. You need. I now I've found that I will every time it's on, I will go because I know I'll get so
Mm-hmm.
much from it. And it's finding things like that. We are quite lucky over here. We do have quite a lot of things like that. There's another one in York, that's a big festival as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got to go out then and see. And even if it's, people say don't copy off other artists and things like that necessarily, but you can look at an artist and think, how could I do that? Or slightly put a twist on it, or
Yeah,
how
it's
can I do that in
about,
my
yeah,
style?
it's, I think the way you look at it, I mean, we look at other people's art all the time, but what I get from is like, what in that interests me? Is that the colors? Is that the texture?
Hmm.
Is that the line
Yeah,
work? What is
yeah,
it? Then from there, you can, try to
yeah,
work on yourself. But
yeah, absolutely.
and I'm actually gonna link that article you have. I think it's really good because this is something that happens a lot. To have the rut.
Hmm.
I recently was on a peak with my anxiety and I was not feeling that great, but I didn't stop working. I didn't stop painting
No, no,
because I knew if in that moment if I do that, it would be worse.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's something that you have to go through. It's kind of like when you are a mom and you have to do
hmm,
dinner.
yeah,
I mean, you have to feed the child, right? And you think, well, I
yeah,
can buy.
absolutely.
Well, that requires effort as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and sometimes it comes easy, doesn't it? It's like not hard at all, and then other
Sometimes I
times
don't
you
feel
just
like make
go for it.
laundry,
Just
but I have to wash my clothes, right? I
yeah,
mean, we have to push
exactly.
through.
Yeah,
So if we have to push through these things because it's like exercise, right? If you stop doing at least, I don't know, 3 times a week, then you just don't go. You just don't do it.
yeah,
After COVID, I exercise at
always.
home. So I bought a bunch of things in the time of COVID. I was really scared to go to the gym. I mean, the gym was closed for a long time, but then when it opened, I was afraid. You had to
Yeah.
schedule. They didn't open for a lot of people. But so I bought everything. And
Mhm.
you really have to push yourself, right? And you know
Yeah.
what? I have a routine. I have a routine now. And
Hmm.
especially here that I moved, that the weather is bad, I can take walks.
Yeah.
And so it's about the effort, but if you do the first step, it gets so much easier, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, when if I ever get stuck or I'm thinking, oh, this is just not working, the absolute best thing I can do is take myself out for an hour walk,
Yeah.
100%. Because there's something about moving, getting fresh air, just the trees, pheromones, whatever it is. I come back
Yeah.
and I'm always in a different place to when I
Yes.
left.
So let's talk a little bit about your clubs because you just hinted a little bit about the writing club. And you
Yeah.
also have a kind of a creative club slash business club, right? So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit these two programs that you run.
Yeah, okay. So I'll talk about the business stroke artist accountability club first. So that's called Wow Wednesdays, and that was born out of an idea between me and a friend who didn't want to create another networking meeting. We weren't big fans of networking meetings. We wanted something that generated some action and some accountability. So we had this idea not having a clue whether it'd work or not. And then we turned up to the first one, and 9 people turned up, and we were like, "Oh, okay." So it's a very simple format, but it's been going over 2 years now, and it really
Wow.
helps people in lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for people who work on their own, or have a big dream. And I'd say half the group are artists, but the other half are completely different businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And all it's about is showing up, committing to doing 3 things before the next meeting that are work related,
Mm-hmm.
and then one life goal. We always have a life goal in there. So that's what they do. They work on these goals, but then in between that, we'll have like specialist sessions that might be on Instagram, social media, marketing, vision boards. We've done all kinds of different specialist sessions in between on Zoom. Um, and then we have a Facebook group as well for that, where we'll put, weekly prompts in there saying how you're getting
Mm.
on. It'll be like a Monday motivation kind of
Mm-hmm.
post. On Wednesday, it's always kind of a celebration day. What have you got to share? What have you got to celebrate? And Friday is often kind of what we call Free Your Mind Friday. So what can you let go of from the week that might have annoyed you, or, you know, not worked quite well enough? What can you let go of so that you can go into your weekend really well? So that's just an example of the kind of post that we're doing there. Um, so that works really well. And, myself and Claire, who run it, absolutely love doing it. It's different to anything else that we've got around us. There's a lot of networking things, but there's not many accountability. Well, I don't know of another one, to be honest.
So it's basically small businesses, right? And for
Mhm.
women. So do you guys
And
discuss also?
we have got one man.
Oh,
We're
okay,
trying to get
great.
more men, to be honest.
Yeah.
And he's a
Eh,
he's a portrait artist.
oh.
He's a really good portrait
So
artist who
you
can.
guys give support about, how us trying to have a business is hard. So it's kind of that support to talk
Yeah,
and to learn together, right?
yeah. So it's almost like creating, when you work on your own, it's almost creating like that colleague team that you would get in a normal, in a corporate business, so that you can bounce ideas off people, you can share things and say, do you think this will work? We liken it to, if you put a question in a WoW group, you often get a faster response than Google, because someone will know someone that's got
Mm-hmm.
the answer to that question. So it's
Yeah.
a really good support group. Yeah, that's what that one's about.
So do you guys meet online or in person?
Both. So during COVID, obviously, was all online. We now back to local meetings, so we meet once every 2 weeks locally. But then there are some people that are part of the club that live further away. So in between those 2 weeks, on the other 2 weeks, are Zoom meetings for the ones that can't come locally. So we do both. Yeah.
Yeah. And I bugged Juliet. Make a time slot for American people. Because this concept, as you said, it seems so unique for me. I mean, we have tons of memberships here, but I think it's different when you have a support group and learning group together, like a small group. Usually, memberships here are get the content by yourself, and then you have a Facebook group that people just randomly post, or it's not that
Yeah.
like I don't know what these people do. I don't know them, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people
Yeah.
use just
Whereas in our
to,
group,
yeah. I sometimes they use these groups just to ask questions, right? So it's not very deep work. It's like
hmm
learn by yourself, and here's the
yeah.
group if you wanted to ask questions and things like that. But we don't know. We don't have that relation. We don't know the difficulties really. We cannot like one day to say, well, this week was not very good. I tried this new
Mhm.
product and didn't sell or something like that, right?
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
have that support.
Yeah, no, it's a really tight knit, close group, and especially through lockdown, it almost turned into a bit of a therapy group as well.
Yeah.
People were really struggling, so it was nice that we felt like we were offering a bit of support throughout that time. Um, People do share when they're struggling. There's one lady who can only come every so often, and she came the other week and just kind of downloaded how she was feeling, and it was so nice to see her and just help her. in any way we could, and that that's gone on for the whole time, and it is a really close, tight group.
Yeah, yeah. And again, people can enter all the time. How's that work?
Yeah, so the membership, it's a monthly paid membership, so it costs just £25 a month. But we're just starting to offer kind of pay as you go as well. For those that can't come all the time, we might do a kind of pay as you go session meeting, but they don't necessarily come to the specialist sessions and things like that, because we don't want to take away from the group membership. So yeah, that's how it works really. They pay just on a monthly basis, but there's no contract or anything. All we ask is like a month's notice up front, and they always get a free first session so that they can test it out, check that they like it, because when you invest in yourself, it's got to be right. So we want them to feel comfortable and to feel right about what they're investing in. Yeah.
And so it's not closed, right? People can register anytime.
Yeah, we're open to new members all the time. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not closed.
And the other thing you do is the writing club.
Yeah,
So talk
so
to us
that
about
is
that.
so that's Creative Writing Club, and again, came out of lockdown, I think, when everybody was bored. So that's done on Zoom on a Monday evening, and I've got a waiting list actually potentially to open up another group soon. And all I do is give people a warm up prompt, which they will do, and then the second part is we'll talk about any homework from the previous week, and then the third part is the main task. So I'll come up with a theme for that evening. It can be all kinds of things. So, for example, the other week was about fire. So it was all about any kind of memory stories around fire. And then we did what's called a shape poem, where you had to fit the words into like almost like a flame picture, if you see what I mean. So that's just one example, but I come up with different ideas every single week. It's really random, and that's what they like because they're being challenged. They don't have a clue what they're turning up to. They just really enjoy it. And I've got two ladies on there who, are my regulars and haven't written for years, but absolutely love it. And what's really great for me is I sit there, give these prompts, I never know if they're going to work, but what comes out of them are the most amazing stories, and I'm just sat there speechless because they've created them. I've just given them the prompt and direction.
So do you guys write together? So there is a moment of silence and then people are writing? Is that how it
Yeah,
happens?
I give them like a timed session. So like the warm up task might be 15 minutes. We'll then talk about the homework from last week. They'll read out their stories from last week and we'll all feed back on that. And then the last session is usually between about kind of half an hour, 45 minutes. And they won't necessarily finish the story in that time. So then that's what they then finish for homework for the following week, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
So what kind of people join? It's just people that are their hobby or they like to write, like they inspired to
Real
write a book
mixture.
or something?
It's a real mixture. So, like I say, some I think are just joining for the chance to do something creative in an hour and a half that's just for them. And I think the benefit is planning that creative time, because if you did it yourself, you probably wouldn't always do it. But because you're turning up to something and you've made a commitment, then you're going to be much more likely to do it.
That's right.
There are writers in there, but that's not compulsory. It's anybody can write from prompts. You don't have to be an author. You don't have to be an expert. It really is for you, and it's for your practice and for your enjoyment. It's not to create some masterpiece that's going to be published next week. So it's a very safe and welcoming group, and we have a laugh. We have a right laugh. Some of the things that come out of the stories, some of the ideas are just unbelievable, and I'm like, how did you get that from that? I find it fascinating. I think it's brilliant.
Well, to me, it seems a little scary because writing is not my favorite. I don't think I'm very good at writing, so it's a little scary to me.
You'd surprise yourself though, because it is guided, and if you did struggle and say, I'm not quite sure what to do with this, I give you extra things. So, for example, if I've asked you to do something with two characters in, I'll give you some questions that you can ask yourself about those characters to get yourself to know the characters more, if you see what I mean. So it's about that kind of character development. You're not left on your own. I'll say, okay, where do you think they last went on holiday? What do you think their occupation is? What do you think they're really scared about? And, it's just key little questions, but it really helps you build a character. And then, it's a lot easier then.
So when I was in school here, I went to school again a little later to help my son. I did childhood psychology and special needs. But
Yeah.
one of the required class, you always have to do something art or something, right? Just to have the
Okay.
art credits. And I
Right.
usually every semester I chose two classes online because I had my son, so could have less time have to go to campus.
Yeah.
And I remember one semester I panicked because the only class he had it was fiction writing, and I entered the class, but I was so surprised actually because, as you said, the teacher gave us foundations and she would correct in Word, and Word has these things that you can put lines, and I didn't even know Word could do that. So she would
Yeah.
correct and ask questions about the plot. And
Hmm.
it was hard. I'm not going to say it was easy. Um, but I wonder if it was something about myself not feeling confident because, I was, I didn't grow up studying English here.
Yeah.
So, but it was very interesting because I thought I can never write I mean, how am I going to have any ideas? And I end up with a draft of a book.
Exactly. This is what I mean is if you think about it, all writing is putting your imagination down on paper.
Yeah.
It's not, and my class is definitely not about grammar, and it's not even really about story structure, to be honest. It's more about the ideas and where they could take you. And then, we might have a bit of a conversation about how you can refine something, but not
Yeah.
really. It's more about, how we found the story. Was it interesting? Was it entertaining?
But for sure,
It's more
it's a
about,
it's a great exercise for creativity. It's
yeah,
great.
because it's playing at the end of the day. It's just using your
Yes.
imagination.
Yes. So Julia, my last question as we are on the hour here is what do you think is a small step that people can take today to exercise their creativity and not feel afraid of it?
Okay, I'm a really big fan of making it as easy as possible because you're more likely to do it. So, what I talk about a lot, because a lot of us have access to them, is photography and using your phone camera and just treating yourself to a bit of a photography afternoon and, maybe pick a theme. So, like, I had a conversation with my son about this actually not so long ago because I saw a really interesting, like old rusty number somewhere, and I was like, "Why don't you do a bit of a photography thing about numbers and see how many numbers you can find to take photos of?" And it's simple things like that. And another great example of this is when you go for a walk in the woods. In our woods, we have um, three trees that I almost think have creatures in them in the bark, if you know what I mean. It's like the texture of the bark.
Yeah.
There's one that looks like a pig. There's one that looks like an elephant, and can't remember what the third one is. I can send you some of the pictures, and you'll see what I mean. And it's looking for things like that. So for me, creativity is about curiosity and noticing things. That's a big part of it for me. And with photography, if you've got given yourself a little theme, you will go on almost like a treasure hunt looking for these images.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, Instagram projects around things like this
Yeah.
that you could do. A friend of mine did
Challenges.
something like, yeah, they gave like each day they gave a thing that you had to find to go to, so it might be in the color red, or it might be a frog that day, and you had to go and find it. And it's really funny. It makes you really competitive to go and find this stuff.
Yeah.
But I just think even just something as simple as taking a photo and then maybe looking at that and think, how could I do it differently tomorrow? What could I have a go at with a different angle, or whether I do something up close so that it looks blurred in the background and create some effects. So that's a really good way to start for me. And from that is often what I will then do art from or writing from. So the images that I've taken will often inspire the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's where, it gives back even more then.
Yeah, I think later you can write about the pictures, like what do you see that attracted you about the colors, what memories gives you, the textures, what that particular piece that you took a picture reminds you. There's so many things, but I think it's great.
Yeah.
More we can be more alert outside of our surroundings is surrounding is better, right?
Yeah. And things like, like there's some really interesting buildings that you might find that you can
Yes.
take photos of, and then you can have a go at maybe like the line and wash type art from that, because you often work from photos on that technique.
That's
So
true.
there's so much that you can get from photography, I think, and even just
Yeah.
getting it home and editing it yourself so that you know how to improve it and just play around with the different buttons. I mean, I did not do any courses whatsoever. I just messed about with the buttons for an evening and worked out what they all did.
Yep.
And that's
Yeah.
sometimes as simple as what you've got to do.
Yeah. Julia, it was such a nice conversation. Thank you so much. And I will for
Thank
sure,
you.
if you're listening to this, her website is thecuriouscreativeclub.co.uk. And you can find her on Instagram at the Curious Creative Club. I would highly recommend for you to check her website. I'm for sure going to put on the notes of the podcast. And when I do the blog post, I'll put some pictures of her art and all the the clubs that she's going on. Hopefully she'll have some evening time for us.
My problem is my daughter still swims 6 days a week, so I only have Monday night free. So when she stops
Yeah,
swimming,
I
I'll
know
have
how
like
it is to have to take kids and be waiting for kids. I would highly recommend you to look if you are listening to this and if you can be on the UK or a close country for sure. But I will always keep a look on the website. And I told her to put me on her waiting list there when she opens new
Yeah, I'd love to
time.
do more, obviously. I just wish I could duplicate myself because there's so much I want to do.
Yeah, and I think the writing club very intriguing. I have to see if I get courage to do that. But I think it's a great idea. I think what you have there in terms of creativity and community around creativity and helping creatives, all kinds of creatives, is a great thing. And I love this idea of the writing club. It's such a good exercise. And I think more and more we need things that we are together, but like
Yeah,
not just together on a Facebook group that nobody knows anyone, but like
yeah,
participating, writing, see what every other person is doing,
absolutely.
having
Yeah,
that really, to me, this is really community, right?
yeah, absolutely. Because
And
that's how you learn, isn't it?
and
Yeah,
I think that's great. I appreciate your blog. I keep reading it. I think it's amazing, and I think
thank you.
all the work you do is amazing, really. And who knows, maybe that kept you sane while you were sick, and helped you to keep your mind, in a healthy state.
Absolutely.
So, we are not saying that these things cure us, but for sure it can help us in hard moments when
Massively.
we,
It really does.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Juliet, thank you so much. It was such a
Thank
pleasure
you. I've
talking to
really
you.
enjoyed it. It's been really nice, and it's nice to do something to an American audience. I told my
Yeah.
son the other week, and he was very impressed.
Wow. Now, watch out. Your mother is, she knows what she's doing. Juliet, thank you again. And, keep
Thank
the
you.
great work because it's just fantastic.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I appreciate you listening to the podcast all the way here to the end. And I would like to thank you so much. And to help us spread the word about the podcast, you can share on Instagram and tag me. I would love to share as well. And take a screenshot and tell me what you're doing while you're listening to the podcast, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate if you could do that. It really helps spread the word about the podcast. I will talk to you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening. Check episode notes at 2worldart.com/blog. Connect with Jana on Instagram at Jana_2worlds. And make sure to receive our artful insights by signing up at bit.ly/join2worldsart.